here's what I did this week on the farm. My permit for my greenhouse finally got approved, which is very exciting. I can finally hook it up to power. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly now going to be useful for next season, but it gives me a lot of time to kind of figure out what my heating plan is going to be for the winter. So, honestly, kind of perfect timing because I was able to figure out this season without it. And now I can kind of spend time figuring out the most cost effective way to heat the greenhouse because it's pretty big. So, humble brag, but like figuring out a heating plan that isn't going to break the bank is kind of important. So I'm going to have a lot of time to work on that. I cleaned up and prepped 3 more beds that included laying out a layer of compost on top, which Elizabeth helped me out with when she was here volunteering. She also helped me out by mulching with straw 4 whole beds of tomatoes and had enough time left over to mulch another aisle with cardboard and grass clippings while I was finishing up my harvest in my new wash station. I officially got it all set up. I'm a big fan of it. I had a tub where I drilled a hole through it and the plug can also be screwed into a hose. So I'm able to kind of control where it drains, and I'll be planting in a water loving native perennial kind of hedgerow there, which I'm really excited about, kind of spending time planning. Elizabeth's helping me pick out some plants. And in my new beds, I transplanted my dried flowers, which is Gomphrena amaranthus, Love Lies Bleeding, which is like the droopy pretty one, and straw flower, which I'm obsessed with. It's an incredibly cool dried flower. I also had some dianthus I threw in there and some sunflowers, and I left a gap for the Daucus, which is going to be ready to go in the ground pretty soon. I'm very excited about that bed of flowers. It's going to look so beautiful once it's blooming. And I also planted my more shade tolerant herb bed. There is a big tree growing on the property line that kind of shades a little bit of that section. So I think it's perfect for things like basil. The basil didn't end up really it's not really in the shade as much as I thought it would be. Realistically, I should have done like a half bed for the shady stuff, but it's too late now because it's in the ground and I was just excited to get it in. So I had Italian basil and lemon basil and sweet Thai basil, as well as lemon balm, lavender, chives, and sage. Oh, and I also transplanted some fennel. The benefit of almost all of those is that they're also deer tolerant. I've been seeing those fuckers a lot. And in spring and up until now, honestly, my plan was just like covering the plants at night, which they needed to be covered anyway. So it kind of worked both ways, and figure out my deer fencing in the meantime. And I just like haven't fully gotten there. I finally have my plan in place. It's just going to take a while to get it fully done. And so in the meantime, I got electric fencing because it's been stressing me out and I can't cover the tomatoes anymore. And I can't be kept awake at night at the thought of deer rummaging through. I literally had a nightmare about it last night that like a herd of deer like just trampled through and ate everything, and I walked out and just had to like deal with it. I've already emotionally come up with like my plan and how I will emotionally process it if that does happen. That would be really devastating. But once I get that electric fencing in, it should be here next week. So I'll be able to get that set up and then it'll give me ease of mind until I can get my full on fencing kind of put in. I just don't want to hire someone to do it. So I want to do it myself. And so I'm going to. So then outside of that, I also interplanted my squash and cucumbers. Interplanting is when you kind of plant into a bed without pulling the crops that are there already or without killing the crops off. So in my Balting, arugula, and tatsoi beds, I kind of just I like spaced out for the crops I was putting in there. So between like 12 and 24 inches, depending on what I was planting. And I cleared out the space for it and then planted it within the mix of it without taking away too much, so I can still harvest brassica flowers from there because I like the idea of edible bouquets. And the idea is that it kind of in and of itself acts as a mulch. I'm a little worried I should have thrown in a bit of amendment before I did it, but it's too late now. And I'm also going to be honest, they were looking very rough. The squash were looking very rough. The cucumbers were looking very rough. That's why they kind of haven't been getting shown recently. So I figure like, fuck it. Whatever happens, happens. I'll give them a fertilizer soak with the watering can later, but yeah, it is what it is, and they'll be fine. And I already have a trellising plan in place for the cucumbers that I'm excited about setting up within the next couple weeks. So stay tuned for that. I also planted sunflowers around the borders of the whole bed spaces, marking every quarter of the bed so that when I'm doing things like doing mixed seating, I can kind of judge like, oh, this is a quarter of the way through. And when I'm laying out compost, it kind of helps me gauge. I should do like one wheelbarrow full of compost for this stretch is enough to cover this. So it kind of helps me gauge that kind of stuff. So I like having them in place. I have almost stepped on them slash have stepped on them like 8 times already. So I need to put in a little bit of like, I need to put a post in to mark where they are until they get a bit bigger. And then I can also harvest them and then leave the stalks. So I'm excited about that. And my first CSA was this week. It was really exciting. The pickup was nice. It was nice to kind of meet everybody. And I made these zines with best storage information and just kind of general information about each crop that's in the box. This week it was radishes, baby lettuce, parsley, and red Russian kale. And in the zine, I also included a recipe. So each week they'll get a new recipe to try that involves at least a couple ingredients in the box. And this week it was a kale and parsley pesto that I got from Modern Minimalism. I was really excited about it. I'm excited for the rest of the season. I still got 19 boxes left to go. The process, I call them boxes, but they're bags. So the process is like each member came up and this week they get a bag and next week they bring their own bag. And I kind of set up a table as if it's like a farmer's market booth. And then they go along and they pick each item that they want. So there's kind of like some choice there. And if they don't like one item, they can take two of another item. And I also had an edible bouquet available as a little extra with tatsoi and arugula flowers. And I also had another market this weekend. I had a lot of new veggies to bring, including beets and kohlrabi. And I had a small batch of hawkeye and radish to sell as well, and adult kale and chard, as well as bagged baby lettuce, and a new salad blend with tatsoi, arugula, and cilantro. My arugula and tatsoi and my radish and hawkeye greens were like, have been just really messed up by the flea beetles. So I'm using beneficial nematodes. I haven't applied them yet, but I'm going to be doing that for my future plantings because I just feel embarrassed about it. And maybe I don't need to, but I do. Oh, and I also had cilantro and parsley bunches. Those I think in the future I need to make bigger because yeah, someone made a comment about, oh, for this. And I guess it's just sitting with me. So, and lastly, I also moved my peppers and Ami or Daucus to my harding off area and was able to fill in the greenhouse with new seedlings, including a small batch of summer squash, cucumbers, and a bit more amaranth. What else did I seed? I seeded a bunch of stuff. I guess we'll never know. What did I seed? I'm so annoyed. Okay, I seeded a bunch and it was really exciting and I was really happy about it. And the last thing I did this week was cut a tarp in half so that I could tarp two smaller sections to kind of expand my growing space even more. One's in an area that already has a tarp next to it, and then another is an area that I have to mow down a bit more before I add the tarp to it next week. So that's what I did this week. Now onto Content Corner. So this week, while I was seating, I watched the Las Culturistas Culture Awards on Bravo. I love those boys and I love that podcast and it's really fun. And it's just like, it feels like watching a very high production end of summer camp presentation play being put on. And I just love it. And it's funny and everyone's just like having a good time. And I loved last year's. I loved this year's. Rachel Ziegler's performance of Fame as a Gun by Addison Rae was beautiful. It was very good. If you have a chance to watch it, I highly recommend. It's very fun to have on while you're like doing something, you know? A good like cooking dinner thing. And as far as what I've been listening to, I've been listening to some Oliver Tree. He died this week. I like really couldn't believe it when I got the notification. It was just like a crazy notification to get. I loved his music. It was so unique and he has such like a very specific style and vibe. And it's tragic that he died as well as the other, I think, 6 people in his helicopter. It was a helicopter crash in Brazil and it just like the details are horrific. And I feel so sorry for his friends and family. And yeah, give his music a listen, I guess. Tragic way to end this. Okay, well, that's what I did this week, and I'll catch you back here next week for week 25.